Up to 10% of the world's food? Fake, not spoiled, engineered to fool safety tests. Picture this, 2 identical bottles, one safe, the other methanol, blindness, in a glass. Welcome to food fraud, deliberate substitution, tampering, and lies for profit. The FBI calls product fraud the crime of the 21st century. And the cleverest fakes? They taste exactly how you expect. Numbers that don't blink. China, 2007, 300,000 poisoned, 6 infants dead. Spain, 1981, approximately 1,200 deaths from tainted oil. India, Libya, methanol-laced liquor, hundreds killed, over 1,600 hospitalized. Estimated cost? Up to $15 billion a year. That's 2 to 15% of a company's entire revenue. Vanished. Here's the twist. The intent is to defraud people, not to make them sick. And the good ones make it as close as possible to the real thing. So how do they do it? And could you catch it before we reveal it? We'll map the playbook, opportunity, motivation, culture, and pull you through real cases. Extra virgin oil cut with lampante, unsweetened juice with secret sugar lines, fake pipes, night shift valves. Before scene 1 rolls, one question. What's the tell that gives the next fraud away? A locked door, stainless steel piping disguised as a PVC drain. Lights on only at night. The label says, unsweetened orange juice concentrate. Inside the tank, 10 to 20% liquid beet invert sugar. This isn't sloppy hygiene. It's food fraud, intentional deception for economic gain. Deliberate substitution, addition, tampering, or misrepresentation of food, ingredients, packaging, or false misleading statements about a product for economic gain. It's calculated. It's intentional, and it's hidden in plain sight. Here's what makes it uniquely dangerous. The adulterants are unconventional, industrial, even toxic, so standard safety systems often miss them. They were never designed to catch sabotage. Even industries with tight controls, tech, pharma, consumer goods, struggle to stamp out product fraud. But food is uniquely exposed. It's perishable and biologically variable, blended through many hands, sold on thin margins, and you can't destructively test every unit before it's eaten. Safety systems look for known hazards. Fraudsters choose unconventional inputs those systems weren't built to find. Why? Because fraudsters are strategic. They exploit 3 pillars. Opportunity. Where can the product be altered undetected? Motivation. Is it scarce, expensive, in demand? Even cheap items are fair game if the risk is low. Culture. Food fraud happens everywhere, but in regions with systemic corruption, it tends to strike more often, hit harder, and go undetected longer. That's the playbook. The primary goal? Profit, without detection. As journalist Sharon Interlandi put it, the intent is to defraud people, not to make them sick. And the good ones will make their stuff as close as possible to the legitimate product because they don't want to get caught. So when people get sick or even die, it's not the goal. It's a consequence the fraudsters are willing to risk. Globally, food fraud costs the industry $10 to $15 billion every year. Roughly 10% of the global food supply is affected. Individual firms can lose up to 15% of annual revenue in a single incident. It affects everything. Public health, company survival, global supply chains, everyday imports, and when it strikes, it's devastating. In China, 2007, melamine-laced milk sickened 300,000 people and killed 6 children. Global cost, $10 billion. Penalties? Life in prison, and 2 executions. The math behind it? Fraudsters could profit $87 million per 1 billion kilos of milk, and China produced 27 billion that year. In Spain, 1981, fake olive oil spiked with industrial-grade rapeseed oil killed an estimated 1,200 people. In India and Libya, methanol-tainted alcohol killed over 300 people combined, with more than 1,600 injured. And in the US, a juice supplier secretly pumped sugar syrup into unsweetened orange concentrate. The scheme used hidden doors, nighttime operations, invoices disguised through brokers, stainless steel pipes made to look like drainage. How did they get caught? A tip-off, lab results, and a whistleblower. And this isn't over. Fake spirits, adulterated milk, tainted spices, counterfeit honey. Next, we'll unmask the methods, how fraud moves through borders, bottles, and barcodes. Because knowing the what is only half the battle. To stop it, we need to expose the how. It looks real. It smells real. It even tastes close enough. But what if your extra virgin olive oil was never virgin at all? In 2023, authorities across Italy and Spain seized over 260,000 liters of tampered olive oil, marketed as extra virgin, tested as anything but. The fraudsters cut it with Lampont, a low-grade oil so rancid, it's not even fit for human consumption. But with the right label and a little market trust, it flowed into kitchens across Europe. That's dilution fraud, the art of turning something real into something profitable, and sometimes into something lethal. Czech Republic, 2012. Bootleg spirits laced with methanol killed 38 people and poisoned more than 120 across the region. Italy, 1986. Cheap wine was laced with methanol to fake strength and body. 23 dead. Over 80 hospitalized. Dozens left blind. This isn't clumsiness, it's a business model. Milk thinned with water or whey. Juice extended with pulp wash. Honey bulked with sugar syrups. Spirits stretched with industrial alcohol. It's everywhere, in global brands and local markets. And while the price drops, so does the safety. You're not just losing nutrition, you're swallowing risk. Up next, Brazil. A milk scandal so audacious, they called it embalmed. Because inside some cartons wasn't just milk, but formaldehyde. Milk is supposed to nourish, but in Brazil, it nearly turned deadly. In 2013, a scandal erupted across the dairy heartlands of Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. Thousands of liters of milk were pulled from shelves. Why? Because they weren't just watered down, they were embalmed. The milk was chemically treated to resist bacteria, the same way morticians preserve bodies. The fraudsters weren't amateurs. They were part of the transport chain, middlemen. Investigators traced the fraud to transporters, not farmers or dairies, showing how supply chain blind spots become points of sabotage. To extend shelf life and mask spoilage, they dosed the milk with formaldehyde and urea, two chemicals never approved for human consumption. One of them, a known carcinogen. Lab tests confirmed it. Anvisa, Brazil's national health agency, declared, "There is no safe level of formaldehyde in milk." Authorities found 318,000 liters adulterated with formaldehyde and urea. Some of it shipped to Sao Paulo and Paraná, quietly, invisibly, dangerously. The motive? Spoilage cuts profits. But embalming milk, that protects the bottom line. And here's the worst part. It passed the smell test. It looked fresh. It poured smooth. It fooled consumers, retailers, and even some inspectors. Because when the crime is chemical, you often don't see it. You drink it. Up next, bright red spices, golden turmeric. But what if that glow then came from industrial lead? It's bright, it's bold, it screams flavor. But what if that fiery red chili powder was tinted with a banned industrial dye? What if that golden turmeric hid a heavy metal? In 2005, the UK triggered one of Europe's largest food recalls. Over 600 products pulled from shelves. The source, Sudan dye, a non-food industrial dye found in a batch of chili powder. It slipped into Worcestershire sauce, then on into soups, ready meals, snacks. The EU's rapid alert system lit up. Supermarkets moved, products vanished. Why color a spice? Because color sells. Uniform, vibrant hues fetch a higher price, look fresher, test buyers' trust, and pass quick visual checks. And it wasn't just chili. Across South Asia, some turmeric was dusted with lead chromate to deepen its yellow. That glow carried a cost. Elevated blood lead levels documented in households, even in the United States. Sometimes the target isn't a spice at all. To brighten a product, fraudsters have reached for whitening agents like titanium dioxide, and in extreme cases reported by authorities, even non-food chemicals such as detergents or paint powders. This isn't seasoning, it's appearance engineering, a deception built for the eye. Make it look premium. Hide age, poor raw material, or corner cutting. Move fast before anyone tests it. Color tells a story, fraudsters write it. Because next, we enter the world of label lies and species swaps, where fish isn't fish, and your beef might have a secret. It says beef. It looks like beef. It even tastes like beef. But what if it was horse all along? In 2013, Europe woke up to a food nightmare. DNA tests revealed that nearly 40% of beef burgers in Ireland contained horse meat. 13 countries were caught in the web. Restaurants, supermarkets, school cafeterias all served the lie. It wasn't just about meat, it was about trust. Because when species get swapped, no label and no system can be trusted. Sometimes the deception is harmless, but sometimes it's deadly. Label says monkfish. Science says puffer. Chicago, 2007. 2 diners land in the ER with classic tetrodotoxin symptoms. Investigators retrace the meal. Fish sold as monkfish. DNA barcoding says otherwise, pufferfish. Lab tests find tetrodotoxin at potentially life-threatening levels in the leftovers and lot samples. The FDA issues a nationwide consumer warning. A voluntary recall follows for the implicated lots distributed. The supplier is placed on import alert for species misbranding. That's species substitution in its purest form. A safe label masking a lethal risk. And it's not just fish. Olive oil sold as extra virgin turns out to be lampante. Manuka honey, often blended but sold as pure. Even faith and health get violated. Beef mixed with pork. Vegetarian meals hiding animal protein. Allergens, unlabeled, waiting to trigger a reaction. Why does it happen? Because the margins are massive and detection? Rare. You eat the lie. They cache the difference, but sometimes the fraudsters go a step further. They don't just fake the ingredient, they fake the brand. Next, knockoff vodka, counterfeit baby formula, and labels that mean nothing. You recognize the label, you trust the brand. But what if everything, from logo to barcode, was fake? China, 2004. Fuyang, Anhui. A wave of counterfeit infant formula hit rural markets. Counterfeit labels and packaging, some with fake manufacturer details, hid a grim truth. Inside was starch, flour, and sugar, with protein far below the national standard. Officially, 12 to 13 infants died in Fuyang, and approximately 170 suffered severe malnutrition. Contemporaneous reports across the region put the toll higher, several dozen to at least 50 deaths, with hundreds of malnourished babies needing care. Cheap powder, tragic outcomes, all for the price of powdered deception. And it doesn't stop at baby food. Vodka and whiskey, counterfeited with methanol and industrial solvents, sometimes fatally. Energy drinks, reproduced with synthetic stimulants and no oversight. Even traceable imports come with forged documents, fake QR codes, falsified origins. If they can fake the box, they can fake the food. No safety checks, no oversight, just brand fraud, scaled like a business, not a crime. For consumers, it's a gamble. For criminals, it's a jackpot. And when regulation can't keep up with replication, anyone can fall victim. Next, we uncover another tactic: padding products with powders, starches, even sawdust. The illusion of abundance, masking the absence of anything real. It looks full, it feels heavy, but what's really inside? In the spice trade, fillers are the invisible fraud. A pinch of oregano? It might contain olive leaves. Cumin? Could be bulked with peanut shells. A hidden allergen, a silent threat. In 2015, U.S. food safety agencies issued sweeping recalls. FDA issued a nationwide consumer advisory, and companies initiated the recalls after undeclared peanut proteins were found in ground cumin across multiple brands. Hundreds of products contaminated by cumin laced with peanut powder. No labels, no warnings, just risk, sealed, shipped, and sold as food. This isn't rare. Brick dust has been found in chili powder, sawdust in turmeric, milk thickened with starch, saffron padded with dyed threads and plant waste. When price is tied to weight, weight becomes the weapon. But these aren't just harmless fillers. They dilute nutrition, trigger allergic reactions, and sometimes introduce inedible, even toxic materials into your food. And no one knows until it's too late. From here, things get darker, because some fraudsters don't just add bulk, they add chemicals that were never meant to touch a plate. Next, melamine, formaldehyde, and the toxic tactics of industrial-grade deception. These chemicals weren't developed for food. They were made for plastics, fertilizers, even tanning leather, but they ended up in your milk. In 2008, China's dairy scandal shocked the world. To fake protein content, suppliers laced watered-down milk with melamine, an industrial chemical used in plastics. The goal? Beat nitrogen tests. The cost? 6 infants dead, over 300,000 affected, and the public's trust shattered. And it gets worse. Leather processing byproducts have been found in dairy. Industrial detergents mimicking protein. Fertilizers sold as food ingredients. These are not mistakes. They are engineered lies, designed to pass tests, dodge detection, and maximize profit. The more potent the chemical, the bigger the profit. But when food turns into industrial chemistry, catastrophe isn't a glitch, it's built in. And when freshness is nothing but a chemical performance. What does fresh even mean? Next, rotten meat, fake expiry dates, and the cosmetic games that keep spoiled food looking alive. It looks fresh, it smells clean, it even sizzles in the pan. But what if that meat expired years ago? China, 2015. Authorities seized over 100,000 tons of smuggled frozen meat, quickly dubbed zombie meat. Some batches were several years old, with some reports claiming decades. Investigators described meat thawed and refrozen as it moved through illicit routes. In separate raids, police even found products soaked in bleach to clean and bulk them. Brazil, 2017, Operation Carne Fraca. Investigators alleged a bribery network that let spoiled or expired meat pass with falsified certificates. Chemicals were used to mask foul odors, and even water injections were cited to boost weight. The fallout was global. The EU and at least 14 countries temporarily blocked Brazilian meat before cautiously reopening markets. This isn't just about meat. Fish injected with formaldehyde to stiffen spoiled flesh, chicken whitened with bleach, repackaged seafood with new expiry dates. It's not food, it's theater, a choreographed deception, masking decay with chemistry. But beneath the shine, bacterial loads, chemical residues, and the ever-present risk of foodborne illness. And still, these products pass through borders, into markets, and onto dinner plates, because freshness can be faked. And taste? That's just another illusion. Next, we explore the sensory illusions. From antifreeze in wine to fake aroma in juice, the final frontier of flavor fraud. Close your eyes. A sip of sweet wine, a burst of citrus, a rich velvety finish. But what if none of it was real? Austria, 1985. Honeyed, viscous, late harvest perfection. Until the sweetness wasn't from grapes. It was diethylene glycol, antifreeze, making cheap wine feel like liquid gold. The clue didn't come from a sommelier. It came from a ledger. Tax inspectors flagged suspicious antifreeze expenses. Follow the paperwork to a Stuttgart lab. A supermarket bottle tests positive for diethylene glycol. Within days, Germany warns the public. Within weeks, the scandal goes global. No, hospitals didn't overflow, but they could have. Regulators found some bottles so heavily dosed that a single bottle could be dangerous. Then the hammer. Millions of bottles pulled. Exports crash. Austria answers with some of Europe's toughest wine laws. A fraud built on chemistry, undone by paperwork and a lab report. In fruit juice, cheap bases get freshness from citric or malic acid. Aroma compounds are layered in to wake up a flat blend. Why do they dose it? To make you like it more. A quality hook. To cover weak raw material, bad crop, off-season fruit. To hide off flavors from spoilage. To smooth over dilution so the product still pops. Seafood? Sometimes it's touched with saccharin so decay smells less like decay. It's called organoleptic manipulation. Fraud engineered to fool your senses. If it looks right, smells right, and tastes right, you'll believe it's right. But these additives aren't honesty. They're camouflage, sweeteners, acids, thickeners, and sometimes toxic polyols, mimicking quality while masking what's wrong. The illusion is powerful. The risks are buried behind a perfect taste. But some don't just fool your senses. They fool your scale. Next, shrimp that weighs more after injection. Chicken that plumps with every poke. When water becomes profit, and you're paying for lies. You think you're buying seafood. What you're really buying is weight in water. In markets around the world, shrimp, fish, and chicken are bulked up, not with more protein, but with injections. Gels, brines, phosphates, even carboxymethyl cellulose, pumped in to plump up the product and inflate the price. In China, investigators exposed shrimp injected with gelatinous fillers. Some gained up to 30% in weight. On the label? Fresh. On the scale? Fraud. And it doesn't stop there. Frozen fish fillets are coated with a thin ice glaze to protect them. But when that glaze is pushed from protective to padding, you're paying for water, not fish. You buy a kilo, thaw it, and a noticeable chunk of that weight melts down the drain. That water wasn't free. You paid for it. So did your trust. It's a quiet con. You can't see it. You can't taste it. But your wallet feels it. And your body, it absorbs sodium, phosphates, and thickeners never meant to be there. This isn't a rogue scam. It's a system, profitable, repeatable, and invisible, until it hits the pan. And if deception can be injected into every bite, what about the food's origin? Next, hidden routes, forged documents, and the billion-dollar black market behind origin masking. Where does your food really come from? The label might say Spain, the paperwork might say Australia, but the truth could be China. Welcome to transshipment, where food takes detours through third countries to erase its real origin. This isn't logistics, it's laundering with a barcode. 2002 to 2013, Honeygate. What began in 2002 as an FDA/CBP discovery of antibiotic-tainted Chinese honey grew into a multi-year federal probe. Importers relabeled and transshipped Chinese honey through Vietnam, Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Thailand, and Mongolia, and in one case the Philippines, to evade anti-dumping duties. U.S. prosecutors later charged brokers and two of the nation's largest honey suppliers. The scheme dodged more than $180 million in duties, and some shipments contained unauthorized antibiotics like chloramphenicol. Homeland Security investigations called it the largest food fraud scheme in U.S. history. And it's not just honey. Seafood, rice, oils, any product with trade restrictions, safety issues, or bad quality reputation becomes a candidate for origin cleaning. Why does it matter? Because origin isn't just a place. It's a proxy for quality, traceability, and risk. A product from a banned factory, reborn with a fake passport, and no one would ever know, except the ones who fall sick, or the industries that lose billions. Every forged origin breaks the chain of trust and safety. And yet, for many fraudsters, origin fraud is just the beginning. Because the most lethal frauds don't just fake labels, they fake nutrition. Next, the deadliest play of all, adding industrial chemicals to mimic protein. And the case that shocked the world. Protein is life. For infants, it's not optional. It's survival. But in 2008, in China, it became a weapon. To fake protein levels in watered-down milk, suppliers added melamine, a toxic industrial chemical used in plastics. The trick? Melamine's nitrogen content fools standard protein tests, making poisoned milk look perfect. On paper, the milk looked perfect. In reality, it was poisoned. Over 300,000 babies were affected, more than 50,000 hospitalized. 6 infants died, kidney stones, renal failure. The scandal spanned over 22 dairy companies and triggered recalls in more than 47 countries. Unimaginable pain, all for profit. The math behind it? Cold, calculated. A few cents of melamine to save millions on real nutrition. And by the time symptoms emerged, the perpetrators were gone, or pretending to be. This isn't carelessness, it's a system. Industrial poisons, disguised as nutrients, sold as food. And the more desperate the fraudster, the more reckless the chemistry. But sometimes, they don't even bother with chemistry. Sometimes they just sell death as dinner. Next, when fraudsters go one step further, not just adding fillers, but using chemicals so dangerous they were never meant for food at all. We've seen the lies, the labels, the lethal fakes, but behind them isn't luck, it's design. Some crimes happen in the shadows, Others are born under bright lab lights. Welcome to the Food Fraud Lab, not the labs that catch criminals, the labs that create them. Here, fraudsters reverse engineer the system. They study real products, read the rule book, probe the test thresholds, then build a fake that sails straight through inspection. Need to fake protein? Use nitrogen-rich compounds, melamine, urea, to fool the numbers. Need weight? Pump brine, phosphates, gelatin, so the scale smiles. Need fresh aroma on tired fruit? Dose acids, flavors, sweeteners, so a weak batch tastes alive. Need a brighter color? Reach for banned dyes or pigments that don't belong anywhere near a plate. And when regulators adapt, the formulas shift. When peanut-contaminated cumin triggered nationwide recalls in 2015, fillers changed overnight. When origin tests started reading pollen, smugglers filtered honey to strip the evidence. New test, new trick, new trick, new test. It's a race, chemist versus chemist, detection versus deception. But there's something the fraud lab can't counterfeit: attention. Audits that follow the ledger, not the label. Sampling that looks past color and claims. Labs that test for what shouldn't be there, not just what's supposed to be. Because the easiest lie to sell is the one we're too busy to question. So here's the close. Trust is earned, proof is measured, and every link in the chain, farmer, broker, processor, retailer, either guards the food supply or leaves a door unlocked. Lock the doors, follow the numbers, test what shouldn't be there.